4 most controversial opinions. Are you ready for that? They won't be controversial to all of you, but some of you, even in this room, will be angry at what I say, and that's okay. We can love each other anyway. So the last few years, I have been on a journey. While I've always considered myself a conservative Christian, over the last few years, as the world has become more progressive, I've become more conservative. As the world has started to reject religion more and more, I have begun to take my faith more seriously. And in that, I have become what I hope to be radically pro-human, radically pro-child, radically pro-American society, radically pro-family. I have become entirely uncompromising on these things, on the things that conservatives are told that we must compromise on in order to win, in order to conform. Even by the right, sometimes we are told that these are the things that we have to bow down on in order to win elections. And yet, there are 4 things, at least, these are 4 of many things, that I hold to that are so incredibly important to me, even though they are wildly unpopular, that I will not budge on. Number 1, abortion is always wrong. Number 2, children have a right to a mom and a dad. Number 3, pornography should be banned. And number 4, Christians should leave the public school system. Number 1, abortion is always wrong. There once was a time when I believed in many abortion exceptions, and I still called myself staunchly pro-life. But I thought, as a conservative Christian, that the nuanced, that the sophisticated and educated position was to be pro-life except. Until I was challenged with a question, actually just a random commenter on Facebook, so don't let anyone tell you that you can't change minds on social media. I was challenged with the question, why should the circumstances surrounding someone's conception, or the diagnosis that they receive, or the situation their mother is in justify their murder? Why should a child be punished for things outside of their control? By believing in all kinds of exceptions, I was actually rejecting the premise of the pro-life argument, which is that babies in the womb are humans, and therefore they are entitled to human rights, the most fundamental of which is the right not to be murdered. There is a Texas woman who is in the news, and while I don't want to pick on her, I think that this is fair game because this is a story that has been talked about a lot. She is suing the state of Texas in order to abort her child, who had tragically been diagnosed with trisomy 18. It's a serious condition that is sometimes, though not always, fatal in hours and weeks after birth. There are babies born with this condition every year. Their parents deliver them, name them, hold them, love them, bury them. Some of these children grow to be toddlers and some teenagers. But this woman in the news in the state of Texas wanted an abortion. But in Texas, you can only get an abortion after a heartbeat is detected if the mother's life is at risk. This mother's life was not at risk. The doctors offered her multiple options to be able to deliver her baby whole. Instead, she chose a D&E abortion in another state. It's a very brutal procedure where the baby is dismembered before being removed. And I hold to the radical belief that that baby was human and therefore had the right to life, had the right to not be torn apart by forceps. Either way, babies have to come out. If the mother's life is at risk, the baby has to come out. If the baby's life is at risk, the baby has to come out. So the choice is really between the baby coming out whole or in pieces. Either way, the baby is delivered. And I am of the radical position that babies deserve to be born whole. And for this position, I and other pro-lifers are being chastised, even by fellow conservatives, that is too extreme, that's going to lose elections. No, conservatives lose because we compromise too much, not because we don't compromise enough. Maybe if we could all unite behind this radical idea that babies are people and shouldn't be murdered, it wouldn't be so polarizing. But conservatives on this issue, many, not all, have fallen into what I call the empathy trap, which is have empathy for this woman by affirming her choice to have an abortion. And while we should and can have compassion for her, we can do so without supporting the choice to end a child's life. Where is the empathy for the child in the womb? An unborn baby is always human, therefore abortion is always wrong. Number 2, are you ready? Children deserve a mom and a dad. Children are entitled to this. Now, conservatives, we're told, are not supposed to care about Obergefell anymore. The decision that redefined marriage. It did not have the power to redefine it because only God can define it because he created it in Genesis 1. But Obergefell attempted to redefine marriage legally. This is another fundamental issue on which the future of America rises or falls. When it comes to the trans debate, conservatives are mostly on the same page. We all agree. Women are women. Men are men. One can't be the other because men and women are biologically different and biology matters. But it doesn't just matter when it comes to sports. It doesn't just matter when it comes to gender. It matters in marriage. Marriage is meant to be, in principle, a child creating, a child rearing, a child protecting institution between the only two kinds of individuals that can make babies, a man and a woman. That biology that we recognize differentiates a man and a woman also differentiates a mom and a dad. Two men may be able to be good dads, but they cannot be a mother. Two women may be able to be good moms, but they cannot be a father, and children need both. Children need their moms and their dads equally, but for different reasons and different stages. I have been incredibly blessed to have birthed and breastfed 3 children now, something my husband cannot do, which he's very thankful for. When my kids are sick or hurt or tired, they cry for me. When they want to be chased around the house, they call for their dad. They come to me for comfort and their dad for adventure. This isn't due to personality differences, but because of our biological differences. Only moms can teach girls how to become women. Only dads can teach boys how to become men. And we know from decades of data what fatherlessness can do to children. Statistically, it increases their likelihood of delinquency, of teen pregnancy, poverty. And yet, in the name of inclusion, we are purposely creating fatherless children. In the name of inclusion, we are purposely creating motherless children. The reproductive industry profits off of this through things like sperm and egg donation and surrogacy, and I don't have time to get into all of that, the horrifying ethics of these practices. Suffice it to say, we are creating motherless and fatherless children in a grand dystopian social experiment, the results of which will be harmful on both an individual and a societal level. We hear this phrase, trans women are women, and we scoff because it's a circular motto that doesn't mean anything. But guess what? Love is just as circular and meaningless and destructive. Number 3, pornography should be banned. There have always been limitations to legal speech, and while we should absolutely advocate for the freedom to express unpopular, controversial things, porn does not fall into this category. Porn has destroyed lives, minds, hearts, marriages, relationships. It incentivizes sex trafficking, pedophilia, sexual violence, objectification. It traps people in addictions. Porn sites feed its users increasingly obscene, perverse, and violent content the longer a person uses. An investigation by journalist Arden Young revealed that Pornhub employees, that they admit on camera to suggesting trans content to its users to try to change their interests and attractions. Journalist Genevieve Glock has revealed through her investigations that many men who begin to identify so-called as women were influenced by the darkest corners of pornography. The director of The Matrix, he is a man who now identifies, quote unquote, as a woman. He admitted in a speech that it was porn that made him realize he was trans. There is no benefit to porn. It only harms, it only destroys, it only exploits, it only hurts, it only harms, and it should be banned. Number 4, we're making good time. Number 4, this is the last one. Christians should leave the public school system. That doesn't mean we should not be involved in trying to change public education for the better, but our kids do not have to be the victims of that. In the words of Vodi Bakum, if you send your children to Caesar, do not be surprised when they come back Romans. All education, for better and for worse, is indoctrination. All education places doctrines in its students. The question is, what doctrines? The only question is, what doctrines do you want your children to learn, and who do you want teaching them these doctrines? Children are in school for roughly 40 hours a week for most of the year, for all of their youth. And in those 40 hours, children can either be learning doctrines that are completely opposed to your worldview as parents, because we know that education is no longer neutral, or one that is in alignment with your worldview. Now, ultimately, yes, parents are responsible for discipling our children, but we want our child's education to complement that discipleship. And if you say, but I want my children to learn to fight battles. Look, your child isn't even big enough to hold their shield. We don't put them on the front lines before they can even carry their own sword. We use these years while they are in our care to prepare them, to teach them, to lay a biblical foundation for their life that will equip them to fight the battles out there. There is plenty of time for that. We train missionaries for years before we send them into the field. We should not place the burden of mission work in the public school system on our untrained 9-year-old third grader. And so we take every opportunity to teach our children the ways of the Lord. Whether that's through homeschooling, whether it's through some form of Christian education, that is our responsibility as parents. We do not outsource discipleship to an education system that hates us. The connection in all of these, and 4 of my most controversial opinions, there are plenty more, is my desire to protect children, to protect the family, to raise healthy, wise, courageous kids raised by healthy, loving parents. If we want to see change, if we want to make a difference, we have to look beyond the pragmatism that we are told will win the next election. We have to look for generational change. You want to know how the Roe regime fell? It wasn't because of one election or one politician. It wasn't through compromise. It was through decades, almost 50 years of the obedience and the boldness of Christians willing to raise up the next generation, courageous enough to protect children. That's how God works. Which means the change we are looking for might not happen tomorrow. It might not happen in the next election cycle, but by God's grace and his providence, change can happen. Change can happen. So if you want to see change, if you want to make a difference, love God. Honor his design. Love your spouse. Love and protect children. Support the family. Nurture and raise a new generation of brave, truth-loving adults who will be agents of clarity and courage in a culture of cowardice, chaos, and confusion. Thank you very much.